Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of High on Data podcast, where we bring in industry leaders to explore how data and AI are shaping the future of enterprise growth. I am Boobesh Ramadurai. I lead the Marketing Analytics Center of Excellence at LatentView, where we help enterprise marketers generate actionable insights using data and AI. Today, I'm excited to have Bryan Saftler with us, Director of Marketing Solutions and Databricks. Bryan, thrilled to have you here. Thanks for making the time. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Boobesh. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Awesome to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Quickly to get started, for those who have not already stalked your LinkedIn, could you give us a quick rundown of your journey so far, Bryan?
Sure. I'm a career marketer, been in the industry for a little over 20 years. I've done a bit of everything, B2B, B2C. I've worked at big companies like Microsoft, across big brands like Xbox and Bing and Azure and Windows. And then in 2022, I joined Databricks to help stand up their industry go-to-market. And I've been here for the last 3.5 years, really focused on how are we bringing Databricks into the next phase of its growth, which is really helping to focus on the industries, which is basically every customer is in an industry. How are we focusing on the industries and solving the unique problems related to those industries? And I look after the communications, media, and entertainment industry as well as our marketing solutions.
That's awesome. And when I went through your LinkedIn, I also found out that you also co-founded a company called Dial Tune Drums. I know that you are very humble and you didn't mention that. But before we get cracking into marketing AI and Databricks, that was something that really fascinated me when I looked at your LinkedIn profile in terms of how a techie kind of having a space in the music manufacturing company and also co-founded. I know that you enjoy drumming, but can you just share your version of the story in terms of this dial tuned drums and what got you motivated into this?
I've always been a musician. I grew up playing music. I'm a drummer. That's kind of like the focus of what I did. I went to school for it and then realized very quickly that it was going to be challenging to make a living on it. So I kind of pivoted and I moved into business and marketing. But I've always kept music, very, very close. And I had an opportunity a little over a decade ago to take an idea that some friends and I had and build a business around it. And it's been amazing in that I have a wonderful creative outlet to test in a very safe but also important environment. A lot of the marketing that I think teams take for granted in larger scales, where when you have big scale, big money, big teams, you kind of lose sight of some of the scrappier, more hand-to-hand combat that's required of smaller startups when they're thinking about how do I, do demand creation, or how do I, do work around building education on a category. There's a lot that goes into just the block and tackle basics, and I love having this counterpoint. I don't always mention it just because it's not my day job. My day job obviously is here at Databricks, but we've built a pretty cool and pretty successful little e-commerce brand that we have a lot of fun with, and it definitely scratches my creative itch, and I love it. I will always have a soft spot for music in my heart.
No, that's a really cool story. That really excited me when I looked you up in LinkedIn.
That's awesome.
And it also clearly shows your passion towards enabling marketing, not only with the big dollars that you have in Databricks, but also with a handful of money that you can put it into the dial tune in terms of promoting the brand as such, and your passion for building things from grounds up, right? That clearly shows. Thanks for inviting us for the Databricks Data and AI Summit, and also recognizing as a launch partner for the data intelligence for marketing. And you and Dan put together a great show this year in the Databricks AI Summit, in terms of pulling up all of these marketing leaders from companies like Atlassian, Dropbox, PetSmart, and even Rick, the CMO of Databricks, kind of co-hosting the whole event. It was a great show, a lot of insights that we got from the real world there. What got me interested is in terms of Databricks has always been a data and AI platform company, but this year there was a lot more focusing on the marketing and marketing function in general. What was the reason for the pivot?
I think in a lot of ways, we are now hyper aware that there are humans that touch data and AI across the entire organization. And we've been aware of that for quite some time. But I think in large part, the growth trajectory of Databricks has always been let's work closely with the practitioners who are touching the data. But now, as we're kind of getting a little bit more elevated in the space, it's really important to understand how we're solving the problems at the leadership level and how that trickles down to the humans who are touching the data on the day-to-day basis. And marketing is a huge component of that. As marketing has moved from very traditional forms of media, out of home, advertising, print advertising, things like that, to more forms of digital where, people are prolific on devices, whether it's a computer or a phone
Yeah.
or a tablet, a television. We have to think of how data and AI play a role in many things like personalization, driving efficient campaigns at scale, internal to marketing teams, how we're helping to democratize insights to access that data so that marketers who maybe not technical in nature can understand what's happening at a given moment in time so that they can independently take an action, or through to like the way that AI is fundamentally changing how marketers go to market. All of that is predicated upon data and AI. And so it's incumbent upon us not just to think about how we're helping solve for marketing use cases, but specifically speak to marketing leaders so that we're talking about the board level initiatives, the outcomes that they're trying to achieve at scale, and help them recognize how a data platform plays a role in achieving that.
No, that is so true. I know that you already touched upon the personalization, or in terms of how data can be monetized and provide actionable insights in the platform, right? I know that you also had great set of speakers in the event. Are there any live examples that caught your eyes in the summit that you can share to our listeners?
You know, Databricks has been focused on marketing for quite some time. In fact, marketing and specifically personalization styled, use cases, they're a top 5 use case at Databricks, and they have been for many, many years. And the reason why that's important is because I think every company, B2B or B2C, has a customer. At the end of the day, you're selling something to somebody, and you have to be able to understand who that person is at a given moment in order to deliver a message that gets them to take an action, that person moment message. And that's really, really important. And so knowing how we've kind of pulled this together, it's really interesting that we've seen some of the largest brands across some of the biggest industries come to life using Databricks, whether that's in retail and consumer goods like PetSmart or HP, to more of like the digital native businesses like Grammarly, who are doing some really, really fascinating stuff, to teams like Atlassian, who in my opinion is like on the forefront of marketing technology today. There's some really interesting stuff that those teams are doing to engage their existing customer base and then build category education ahead of their future customers, the ones that are in their target market but aren't ready to buy yet. And that's really important, where we're helping teams not only understand how are they using data to engage the customers today, but then build the customers for tomorrow.
Yeah, rightly pointed out in terms of what Atlassian is doing. I remember the Atlassian CMO, she was saying that they are already using Databricks platform and building how, along with the agentic applications, in terms of how to have a better experience for the people who are getting on board as a customer, right? And they are also saying that they are already able to see the incrementality up to like 15% lift when it comes to email opening because of this agentic automated fashion. And how Dropbox, the head of marketing, they were saying that how they were looking at not only the content generation but also content dissemination to the right set of users, and how this can be done through agentic version, right, in terms of test campaigns and all of that.
Really interesting stuff that's happening right now as it relates to AI in marketing that I think sometimes gets overlooked. A lot of attention is focused on chatbots. So you think like ChatGPT, Claude, Grok,
Yeah.
Meta AI, right? There's a lot of attention there. But I think some stuff that's really interesting that's happening is around helping teams scale efforts that were traditionally very human, like segmentation is a great example of that, where it's about how do we as humans think about segmenting different audiences and putting together ideas. But what an AI can do far better than a human is hold more segments at the same time and make connections, because it's able to look at a broad set of data in a way that humans can't, to infer connections that we might miss. Hey, these people who have this behavior of searching for content or demonstrate this type of profile in their adoption curve might be interested in these types of bundles or these types of packages that you may not have considered. And then you can go test and learn on that in real time. Whereas I think in
Yeah.
the past, the process for putting that together was so long and so linear that you might lose that level of insight where you put something out there, but then you forget why you made that connection of a segmentation in the first place. And so just AI is shortening that feedback loop for a lot of teams. It's giving people the ability to scale things more quickly, such as you mentioned, personalization of emails. Like only an AI can look
Yeah.
at Salesforce records and understand that you're coming from this specific industry, and so I have this segment or this component in my email that can be swapped out for, like, say for example, customer stories that relate to your industry, so that I don't have to necessarily write 300 separate emails and then figure out how to specifically send one to the right person, but maybe have an error if I send it accidentally because I am manually curating. Whereas an AI component of that can help ensure that the personalization that I'm sending is done so with less effort. So I'm scaling faster and it has higher efficacy. And by the way, it's measuring this thing the whole time. So I can understand if that went out there, did somebody open it? And if they opened it, did they take the action I wanted them to
Yeah.
take? And so this whole process, like I mentioned before, like closing that feedback loop is mission critical. And that was a really big theme that we were hearing at our Data and AI Summit with marketers, where marketers are saying, this is game changing for me. It's not necessarily the quote unquote killer app, but the application of this, where I'm unifying my data and then I'm bringing AI on top of it to scale the people and the program dollars that I have. That's like the big takeaway.
That is so true. In fact, I am a data scientist myself, and I know that when we used to build customer segmentation, it always used to have like 6 or 7 as a magic number, because that is how the human mind used to comprehend. And anything which is more than that, it's like it is just too difficult to manage. And then it becomes like data as an enemy. Marketers used to think that, why are you bringing tons of data? I'm not able to make use of some of that. And with the whole agentic AI, now I think you can go at a micro segment level and individual level, and everything can be done within the Databricks ecosystem with the agentic workflow. And especially some of the applications and agents that can be built on top of Databricks, I think it's a great value add. I can see in this year's summit there is a lot more focus on agents and application, as you said. And especially, even though ChatGPT, Perplexity, everybody is focusing a lot more on the consumer side of it, I can see companies like Databricks, which is focusing a lot more on how to enable all this application for the enterprises using their own data, and they don't need to go out of that. Yeah.
There's a story that we told at our Data and AI Summit this year, which was around how Databricks is using Databricks to do our own marketing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very seminal part. We are customer zero for a lot of the work that we do. But from our perspective, our ability to do personalization, the way that we think about running more efficient and effective campaigns at scale, we have a really interesting metric that we call forecasted pipe on investment, so FPOI. And it's really important in the way that we've built this model. It allows us to make predictions with high degrees of accuracy, that if we're going to go put this campaign out the door against this target audience with these types of assets, with this type of messaging, what is the anticipated pipe that we're going to receive as a result of that? That level of information, that level of insight is critically important for us as a business when it comes to making investments, because Databricks, like many other companies, is incredibly ROI intensive. We are hyper aware of every single dollar we spend and where we spend it and how we spend our time.
Yeah.
And so knowing that we have a lot of opportunity, but we are going to throw fewer stones, make bigger splashes, having a model like that is really, really beneficial. And then you mentioned also, like, how are we using AI to help our teams? Like, we have a great, tool within AI BI Genie that we use. We have our own internal version of what we call Marge, which is our marketing dashboard.
Yeah.
We
I
use
was about to ask about that. Yeah.
Exactly. We have the ability to ask questions of our data, which is phenomenal, especially if you're non-technical. You can say, hey, how did this campaign perform? What was the conversion from U2 to U3, so on. And then the last bit that's, I think, super interesting is what we're doing around AI automation. We have years, almost now a decade of content that exists on our website, and just the sheer volume that we are prolific at creating content.
Yeah.
But then the way that the schema for metadata is set up is complicated, and it evolves over time, because we know, SEO is evolving, and now we're getting into GEO, generative engine optimization. And so the need to evolve the schema accordingly and adapt the metadata is really important. But us to be able to go back and look at all of that content and reconfigure it in a way based off of the new schema we're moving to is a very onerous task if you're going to try and put that upon humans. And so we've automated, we have a tag your it URL bot, which allows us to go back and edit all the metadata across all of our assets to the new schema so that everything's aligned, and it helps us drive better SEO. It helps us drive better GEO, because at the end of the day, we have to think about not just the work that we're doing from a paid, push marketing kind of focus, but also the organic component of it. How are people finding us organically on the web? Are we answering the questions that they most have, readily available? And we don't know what assets are going to do that. So one way we can ensure that we pop to the top is just to ensure that our data isn't being hidden accidentally because we haven't done the work to tag it appropriately.
That's really interesting, and especially how Databricks as a platform is not only enabling the customers but also enabling the internal users, right? In fact, I wanted to ask, are you using Marketing Genie on a daily basis? And it seems like you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, probably our most prolific users are CMO, Rick Schultz. He's great about that, in that he'll use it to ask a lot of first step, second step questions, which then informs him with a little bit more insight so he can get to the digging in a little bit deeper. Because I think if you were to have just, in any LT conversation, you were to have a back and forth, typically it's 2 or 3 back and forth questions before you get to the point that you're trying to make, where here's the action I need you to take, or here's the insight I want to make sure that everybody gets. His ability to ask that of a bot in real time, whether he's in the meeting and he's literally sidebarring with Marge, or he's doing it offline, I think it's really important that, we're giving people tools to help them get to action faster. And that's how we think of Marge internally and how we use it.
That's awesome. In fact, some of the other points that you touched upon, saying that the content, the GEO, and how right now I feel like we are in a phase where both the content that is being generated by the brand has to cater to both the SEO and the GEO. It is not like one versus the other. Maybe by end of 2026, we will be catering only to the GEO world and not really the SEO, especially with all Perplexity coming up with their Comet, and OpenAI is thinking of coming up with their own browser. It's a very interesting space, and a lot of work for marketers. We need to keep up with the trends that is changing and adapt our strategy and our content accordingly. Awesome. I think I can keep going on for hours. Bryan, I know that you have a lot of things in your plate, and you took some time for us to have this conversation. If I just want to wrap things, and if I want to ask you, for all the marketing leaders who are listening to this podcast, what are the 3 things they should use data and AI and stay competitive in their space?
I would summarize it in really 2 ways. One, the outcomes that you're trying to achieve are only ever going to be as good as the data that goes into it. I was having a wonderful conversation the other day. I'll keep the name of the customer out of it because you'll recognize the challenge in a second. But I was talking to a wonderful customer the other day who was in the rental space. And one of the challenges that they have is 80%, 90% of their customers are in-person cash-only buyers who come in and make a purchase, but don't really leave a digital trail behind them. So their ability to personalize content, whether it's email nurture marketing or demand gen, do segmentation, it's really complicated, because the behavior pattern for so many years has been that someone calls a sales rep or comes into an office and makes a purchase. And part of the conversation that we were having was, how are you going to not only evolve the way that you capture the information from your customer, especially at the point of sale, how are you going to evolve that so that it helps support the marketing activities that you need to do online? And that was a really eye-opening moment for them, because they thought, hey, if we just go to Databricks, all this stuff's going to light up. And the reality of the situation is, if you don't have the data to begin with, then there's nothing that you can do with any data platform. So I think first and foremost, every leader who's listening to this needs to understand, are you able to capture the data that you ultimately need in order to make a really good decision? The second thing that I think is super important is to think about unification. As we go out there, every good story has an antagonist. The antagonist of the stories that we're dealing with these days is really around complexity. And if you're a marketer, a huge flag to look out for is the fragmentation and the complexity that sits within your marketing stack. If you have a single view, one source of truth for customer and campaign data under a unified data platform, the ability to activate on that data is literally limitless. But if you are dealing with fragmentation of data, you've got an enterprise data warehouse over here, you've got maybe 1 or 2 CDPs over there, you're using multiple tools, kind of splitting data, you're only going to be looking at a small slice of the potential possibilities of what you can do with that information and data. And likely you'll be able to get to stuff, but it's going to be this weird round trip using duct tape and baling wire. And it's weird. So just be thinking about, how can I unify my data? Whatever solution you have, whether it's Databricks or our competitors, doesn't matter. Just unify your data. It's going to help you go a lot farther, a lot faster. And I think the third thing that's really important is, like, don't look at use cases with data and AI as I have to do it all or nothing. There is a very important component here around an iterative approach. What is the most important use case or outcome that you're trying to achieve? And go do that thing. Don't worry about trying to make everything perfect before you get started. I think a lot of teams kind of get stuck in that analysis paralysis state. And the thing that they need to remember is that getting started on one use case, showing the value of that, it unlocks internally the coalition required to continue that investment. And I've seen great success from teams who will start with one amazing use case, find immense value from that, and then use that as a way to kind of push ahead. So that just those 3 things to kind of summarize on: your data is only good as the data that you're collecting. 2, unify that data. And 3, think about it through an iterative approach, and you're going to find a lot of success.
Cool. That's awesome, Bryan. Collect the data, unify the data, start small and start moving. No, that's awesome. I'm sure that everybody is going to resonate to the thoughts that you have. Thank you so much, Bryan. Thanks for taking your time and being with us. And it was a pleasure having you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope everybody found this to be valuable. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.